May we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Decker,
Here.
Director Harvey,
Here.
Director Hart, he's here. He's
Oh,
here,
here.
right?
Yeah, you hear me? I'm sorry.
I heard
I
him.
heard him.
Okay. Director Lohman,
Here.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes, present.
Well, for president's statement, I'm just going to say, I think we've been working here at MWSD on trying to take good care of things on behalf of our community. And in doing that, we've had a long running set of interactions with folks similarly engaged at agencies up and down the coast and with regulators up and down the state. And I'm convinced that we are embarking this year on an increased effort at finding unity with some of our colleagues at other agencies. Things have been difficult at times, but as an example, our SAM reps are working with our colleagues at SAM to try to take a fresh look at some things, and I'm hopeful. And I think we've got a lot going on around us that encourage us into that hope. So looking forward to what this year has to bring with the efforts of a bunch of people of goodwill to try to do good for the community. With that, let's go to, we have nothing on the consent agenda, nothing on old business. Let's move to,
What about public
first, do we
comment?
have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
Greg?
Greg?
Yeah, I'm ready. Two things. We have a strategic planning kind of retreat for the MCC this Saturday, and I'm open to receiving thoughts from residents about what the priorities ought to be for the MCC for the next year or years. Secondly, as somebody just pointed out, the Connect Coast Side supposed final draft has just come out. And I have to ask two detailed questions, which I'll put in an email. But it has to do with whether Montara has participated in reviewing and or drafting some of the materials in this document. Specifically, there are 3 roundabouts projected, and it just strikes me and some other residents that there are high pressure water and sewer pipes adjacent to Highway 1 that would be affected by this construction. So the first question is, has Montara Water and Sanitary District provided estimates for that work? The second issue is the extension of Carlos Street to 16th Street. It would look like they have to move the sewer access box that we just replaced 2 or 3 years ago for over $1 million. So has Montara Water and Sanitary District provided estimates for that work? So I'll put this in an email to Clemens, but in general, were you consulted and did you forward to Joe Leclerc or members of the planning staff estimates to be part of their quoted numbers? Thanks.
Clemens,
Thanks, Greg.
Clemens, do you have anything that you can offer on that?
Yeah, I can briefly say that we actually had, oh no, I forget her name, from the county here presenting the Connect the Coast study. And so we provided comments in writing, by email, as well as verbally at the meeting, with concern about the location of some of the suggested roundabouts, at least of the prior version of the study. Since the study came out today, I didn't get a chance to look at it and see the location of the roundabouts or changes to the traveled way of Highway 1 or associated roads. So we're going to take a close look at that, but yes, we provided comments with concerns about both the SAM IPS pipe as well as our high pressure water mains in that area. And with high pressure, I'm not exaggerating. We have pressures of above 200 pounds per square inch in that area.
Did you provide cost estimates?
Well, no, I mean, we did, I still don't know what you're really talking about. So I wouldn't
If
be
they're
really
going,
able
if
to
they're,
provide a cost estimate for, what it would take, or if there is even a need to move anything at this point. I've got to look at that.
okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, do we have any other
I've
comments
got
for items not on the
I
agenda?
do. I
Catherine?
do. I want to add some information to Greg's excellent question. Everybody who is listening can find the final administrative draft on Connect the Coast Side on their website at planning.smcgov.org/connect-coastside, along with an executive summary of the plan. There are going to be some public meetings on this, and the more people who give their opinion, the better the result generally is. And if somebody gets ticked off at what's been offered by the county and decides to appeal it all the way to the Coastal Commission, if you haven't commented at the local administrative levels, don't get an opportunity to comment to the Coastal Commission. So it's important to get your comments in. There is going to be a review and discussion of the updates of the plan at the January 27, 2021 meeting of the Mid-Coast Council. And that is done by Zoom. And then there will be a Planning Commission meeting on February 10th, 2021. I will say I am one of the people who has been in favor of roundabouts. I've used them all over California and in Europe, and I think they keep traffic moving and keep it more sane. So I am not sure I agree with the number that the county is proposing nor the locations, but in general, compared to stoplights, I think we will have a better flow of traffic. The other thing people should be looking at is street crossings, so people can get across the highway. That's pretty critical, particularly with this COVID shutdown, looking at the number of people coming both north and south anymore along the highway. It's jammed anytime pretty much during the day. So please, everybody, get your comments in as individuals, and this board will probably be looking at it too with the issues that Greg has raised. Thank you.
Do you know, Catherine or Greg offhand, I'm just looking at the Montara map with some of the markings, and notice coming up Main Street, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, they have indications for proposed intersection control. Do we know what that is? It's one each at all four of those intersections along Main Street.
I don't want to
along
comment on
Main
the
Street.
final draft.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't want to comment on the, I don't want to comment on the final draft because I think they've changed that. So I'll have to look at it.
Do we know what a proposed intersection control is?
Stop sign?
Yeah, yes, it
No,
includes stop
they
signs.
have a separate indicator for stop signs.
One more
It's
thing
on
to
page,
look at.
it's on page
everybody.
11 of the executive summary. So
All
if you live here in Montara,
all
take
right.
a look at page 11. I got some questions. Rick?
Scott?
Th-
Yeah.
There was
my-
talk
my
of
con-
raised medians, raised, what do you call it? Crosswalks.
Rick?
I haven't read the final because there's been too much LAFCO crap happening right now. But my concern has always been, it has sometimes seemed to me like it's a Guinness Book of Records attempt to see who can pack the most number of signs and signals into a half-mile strip in Moss Beach. So I definitely want to look at it, but turning Moss Beach and Montara into a signal contest or a stop sign or whatever they're planning on doing was my biggest concern. So I'm hoping in the final draft that's been ameliorated a little bit because we don't need to look like downtown New York City or something. So
Yep.
I'll definitely comment. Thank you, Greg.
Well, thank you, Greg, for bringing that up, and Catherine for elaborating on that. I see no other raised hands. If not, let's move on to new business item 1, review and possible action concerning adoption of connection charge report.
Thank you, Scott. This is standard item for any special district in California. What we're doing here is we're making sure that we are not charging too much money for connection fees, which would be the case if we spend less money in improvements than we collect. So we have a running tally of essentially the connection fees collected and how much of these connection fees we spent on capital projects, which is supposed to be, all of it. So this past calendar year 2020, we collected and spent $308,000 in connection fees. And it's actually an interesting list because it shows how much fees we collected in the past, 2 decades almost on connection fees. And I think it shows a slight dip in connection fees, but we've been increasing in the past 3-4 years significantly on what we collect. So the action here that we're asking for is to simply authorize the filing of the annual connection report with the district clerk. So we have to prepare this report and file it.
Just before we authorize, I have one question. Don't we have a consultant that looks at our connection fees on a regular basis? And when is that next connection review fee due?
So it's done in a bit larger intervals than rates. So it's up to us really when we're looking at connection fees. We did that here, I believe, in 2017 last, where we considered that's on the water side, our water connection fees, and looked at the reasons for, charging these certain amounts. So there's a connection charge study, I think with the date of 2017, that essentially lays out why we're charging what we're charging. And that was at the time. And since then, we're raising connection charges, but that is in accordance with standard indexes.
Right.
That would be the cost of construction index for the connection charge.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Going to the board, any further discussion?
Nope.
I have a comment. Thank you, Clemens, for mentioning that we don't leave our connection fees flat, but we raise them in an indexed manner. I think that's, people need to know that.
I also want to be sure that Catherine only gets one vote on these things, although she's trying to include extra animals in the voting process.
Well, yeah.
Tracy, if you'd be mindful of not calling the dog's name, that might help.
Okay, Tracy, you're on notice.
Can I have a motion to authorize filing of the annual connection report with the district clerk?
So move.
I make that motion.
Okay,
I'll
give
second
the
it then.
motion to Rick and the second to Peter, since time flows in one direction as far as I know. Tracy, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on
And
to,
let me add to Rick that although he wasn't on the board then, when she was a little teeny puppy, I used to bring her in and let her sleep on my lap because I didn't want her to be left all alone.
I'll bring one of my mountain lions or some of our chickens in next time.
we're going to
Or
have to have
both,
some kind of
or
slogan,
fun.
Catherine cares.
I have a bird behind me, but I'm hoping he stays quiet throughout this.
Oh, what kind?
It's a parakeet.
Oh, they're so
Ooh.
It's
cute.
actually, so when our younger son was about 7 or so, and he really wanted a parakeet. And my wife and I thought, well, okay, how long can a parakeet live? Well,
Oops.
my son is now 20 and he's at University of Washington, and that bird is just doing
Oh my
fine. It's pretty old.
They're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to new business item 2, review and discussion review of discussion with AT&T to consider cell antenna and equipment at Alta Vista site.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I think we talked about about discussions with AT&T at 2 prior meetings with various, in various opportunities. I know it came up during the AQPI project from the SFPUC on top of Montara Mountain, for example. So we mentioned that here and there at public meetings, but we thought it is actually a good idea to bring this up to the boards and the public's attention a bit more targeted with a specific agenda item, even though we are very much at the beginning of the conversation with AT&T. Just looking at what are their ideas and how do those ideas really fit with what we could offer them at the Alta Vista site. And before I take away all the thunder here, I'm gonna hand this really over to Aaron. And before I do that, Aaron, I wanna apologize for the typo in your name that I put in the staff report here.
No worries.
But maybe you can, yeah, so Aaron Aaron's perspective is really the district's perspective. So he's essentially very versed in negotiating cell leases and did that for many years for actually the providers. But at one point, I guess you just switched sides completely, and you're now taking really the look at it from the perspective of the property owners, and you work particularly with public agencies quite a bit together. And we have a contract with you. I don't know if folks remember, we engaged, I think, 2 years ago in an agreement with you. So yeah, Aaron is really helping us very much with these discussions and reviewing our existing agreements. So Aaron, maybe just tell us a little bit of what the AT&T wants and what we're saying to that right now and what could come in front of the board at one point for a decision.
Sure. So just to sort of start at the beginning, we identified the Alta Vista Tank 2 with Clemens. AT&T had approached the water district, actually interested in Tank 1, and the decision was made. I think Clemens pointed out that Tank 2 has a lot more space. It's further away from residences and so forth, and it's just a better situated. And AT&T decided that it would work for their coverage objectives, at least on a preliminary basis. So we're very much at the beginning of this process, and we are studying their design. We're beginning to a proposed lease agreement that would apply to the space. But most importantly, right now, we're studying the design. And, our objective is first and foremost, to make sure that whatever design ends up working for AT&T does not impact the water district, or interfere with the operations of the water district in any way. Number one. Number two, that the service to the community is going to be effective, and that really is in AT&T's court. But they believe at this point that having a site at Alta Vista Tank 2 will provide a significant improvement in coverage for the community. So we have been, we're looking at a very preliminary design involving about 650 square feet of land. There will be a couple of conduit runs for fodder and power up the dirt road, past the Alta Vista tank to the AT&T site. And the AT&T site is just north of.
We're losing you here, I think.
I was wondering how he could speak so well with his lips not moving at all.
Did we lose Aaron completely?
Well, we see him.
It was pretty cold last night, so maybe he's actually frozen still. So.
Let's give him a minute.
Oh, now he's gone.
Quick question, Clemens. Is it
Yeah.
obvious that he's an AT&T employee?
Well, he's
or a private consultant is what I'm kind of.
a private consultant, yes, but definitely, again, like I said, he's taking our viewpoint, and that is very helpful in understanding, the agreement, as well as why are certain clauses in there, as well as what I said. I think he has a good knowledge of the value of the site. So I'm confident that, if it comes to negotiations, we actually going to see an advantage
Sure.
having him on board.
I'm in favor of the best telephone company, whichever that is, because I get nothing up here.
Yeah.
I was just curious if there would be an advantage to get a price war going with Verizon or something like that. Would that be better for the community, or if AT&T just gives us a good proposal, go with it? Since he's not there.
No, I mean, we're kind of doing that in the sense that we've been offering the Alta Vista site to other providers in the past.
Okay, I just want to be fair.
Yeah, so we've been talking to other providers. It's actually, quite frankly, there is so many intermediates, right? So it's usually not the provider themselves that are approaching you, but it's actually lease agencies, like American Tower, for example, is one that is active in the area, that are securing the sites, establishing the sites, engaging into the lease agreement. Oh, hey, Aaron.
Hey, Clemens, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden my screen went blank.
Yeah, no problem. I just put you on speakerphone and have you in front of the computer, and you can just take it away from here.
All right, I'm trying to reconnect on the Zoom meeting, but bear with me one moment, because I'm on about 5% on my phone, and I want to plug it in real quick. So
okay.
I'm sorry, just bear with me one moment.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right.
So in the meantime, I'm just gonna turn you off speaker and continue. So yeah, so for example, so there's all these intermediate companies, and one of the things that Aaron is pushing very much for is that we're dealing actually directly with the cell providers. So it's not a given that, something like this would be implemented by us directly with AT&T. But I think that's one of Aaron's achievements, that he's getting us directly to the cell provider.
Sure.
And he's joining us right now again. So
Okay, thank you.
hold on. I think you're still not actually in. I can hear you over the phone. Admit one more time.
My goal was just to avoid any future issues with other companies saying, why didn't you talk to us or something? Yeah. So if we're good with that, that's fine.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we definitely are. Aaron, let me put you on louds. Here, I got you on speaker. You can start talking again.
Okay, all right. So yeah, just to address that concern, I mean, this site, if it eventually is able to be built and, you know, it works for the Montara Water and Sanitary District, it would not preclude other future carriers from locating space, you know, in the same area, because there's plenty of room behind on the north side of the water tank, which is where the AT&T site is proposed to go. So it's basically right now it's a, you know, roughly 650 square foot site, which is a little bit larger than if we were approached by AT&T 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. They probably would have been okay with about 300 to 350 square feet. But now the carriers are required by the state to include generators in their design for, you know, emergency power and so forth. So this site right now is also proposed to contain an emergency power generator if there's ever a power shutdown. So that square footage, the fiber and conduit runs up the road to the site, along with a approximately 70-foot tall monopole is what is slated right now for the current design. So again, we're just really at the beginning of the process. We still need a lot more information from AT&T, and you know, eventually we'll get all the information. But I think that that right now, I think Clemens and the water district are just sort of analyzing the location, making sure it can go where it's slated to go, that there will be minimal interference in operations. And so that in a nutshell is the project. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, the 70-foot tower.
Hang on. Through the chair. So it's we got a lot of people interested. So let's start with members of the public. Greg.
So I'm on the Midcoast Community Council, Aaron, and one concern I think we have as a community is the poor cell phone reception here. So if you could speak to two things. One is, would this improve reception for other carriers? For instance, I'm on Verizon, or would we have to switch to AT&T to get the benefit of it? But the other issue is disaster preparedness and emergency warning. It seems that many of the systems the county has been putting into place rely on cell phones and cellular reception. And a concern is that in the event of a strong storm, earthquake, or wildfire, there might be disruption to the electrical and cellular infrastructure. So you caught my attention when you mentioned the emergency generator. So the related question is, would this infrastructure be robust in the event of a wildfire or other power outage? and still allow coastside people to participate in, for example, cellular alert services that the county's running? Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question. I think that, you know, part of the answer would depend on what the emergency is. You know, obviously, if there's a fire close to the cell site, which hopefully there wouldn't be, but you know, cell sites are affected by heat from fires. The equipment can fail in a fire, but provided that, you know, that the fire is not real close by, and in the event there was a power outage or shutdown in a storm, for example, then, you know, there's a very good chance, because these sites would have an emergency generator, that there would continue to be a signal, and, you know, for warning systems and what have you. So again, there's many variables. It depends on the emergency at hand. But the fact that, you know, AT&T and the carriers in general are designing their sites, and particularly like a raw land site in this case, to, you know, be able to withstand certain wind loads, you know, have emergency power in the event that there's an emergency. Looks like looks like let me see if I can come back into the Zoom.
We're good.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. You know what? I'm getting a message at my on my phone, if that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, there was an echo. Just stay on your phone.
Yeah. Okay. So I hope at least that answers your question to some degree.
What about is this tower only available to one carrier?
Well, yes, and that's sort of by design. The property is such that the property can support many carriers. The tower, what we've tried to prevent is having a situation where, like, there's a tower company involved, and what happens in that situation where a tower company gets involved, they are the tenant, and then they in turn sublease space to T-Mobile, Verizon, what have you. And a couple things happen. The first of which is that the water district can lose a degree of control over their property. And the tower companies are not always transparent in how they operate. And I you know, unless it's decided by the water district otherwise, that, you know, I recommend having a direct relationship with each carrier. And, you know, if there's another carrier that is able to locate equipment up there, fine. There's plenty of room. And another issue, as far as having a direct relationship with the carrier, is that the water district will benefit financially much more so than having a lease sublease with a tower company. So, and I say this based on other situations I've observed where a property owner is getting just a small fraction of the revenue they would have gotten had they had a direct relationship with the carrier as opposed to a tower company.
Rick?
Yeah, I think that's all great news. My only question would be is, without being a joke, we're a very convoluted community up here with hills and valleys all over the place. Is it possible to get a map of probable coverage? Because, you know, some people may be, you know, not in the line of sight. I would just love to see a coverage map of who's uh, cell service would be improved. I'm personally,
Yeah,
well, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm a Verizon person, but I just want good coverage. And I think emergency coverage is absolutely key here. I mean, if I can't connect sometimes during a day, I go through Wi-Fi, but
Yeah.
I'd love to have real cell coverage. So
Yeah.
I think this is a great proposal.
I think that's a very good point as well. And that's something that I think when the project gets further along, we can ask AT&T for a propagation study. And, you know, that's something that they would be able to supply to us. It's probably a little early right now for that,
Okay.
but, you know, once the design is confirmed, I think they should be, that's kind of a, you know, I haven't had a lot of folks, any of my clients, ask for those types of studies, but I think that's it's an interesting point, and it's something that that AT&T should be able to provide.
Let's go to Jim.
My question is directly related to Rick's. Aaron and Clemens, can you, for the homes that are in the kind of in the shadow of Alta Vista, can you? I think you partly answered the question, but could you make sure that the tower is tall enough and that homes in the shadow or of the area can be covered, can get reception? If you can just kind of keep an eye on that, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, and we're having an ongoing discussion about tower height, and you know, AT&T's looking at that, and with the idea of covering residences exactly how you're describing. So.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point.
Okay, Peter.
My other concern is if that tower is 10 feet high.
Wait, Peter, can you start over again?
By neighbors who are going to complain. Is there any danger that we will be sued by nearby houses that all of a sudden see a 70-feet tower arise in front of their view?
All right, so I apologize. I don't know if I heard all of the question, but I think I know where you're going. So, you know, the water district in its contract with AT&T, you know, AT&T has to protect and indemnify the water district for everything, just about everything relating to its AT&T's operations and construction and so forth. You know, they have to go through all their permits and, you know, be in conformance with all codes and ordinances and FCC regulations and so forth. So, you know, I think that the burden would be on AT&T if there was such a, you know, if a neighbor were to bring suit against AT&T. But there's also, I think that AT&T is going to try to mitigate issues, because I think they're going to have community meetings with
absolutely
all adjacent property owners. You know, that's going to be a requirement. And really the water district, you know, they want to be assured as much as the community that this will be safe, that the coverage will be effective. You know, the water district is aligned with the interests of the community. So AT&T is going to have to demonstrate the efficacy of their system, you know, to the community, but as well to the water district.
Catherine?
Yes. San Mateo County offers no view protection for residents. So if you have a house with a great view and somebody plants a hedge in front of you so that you have no view, you have no protection. You have no right to sue or even to protest. Well, you can protest, but for all that, it won't do you much good. I also believe that San Mateo County, as I recall from years back, has been promoting cell towers for emergency services and emergency communications. And so of course, you'll have to get a permit from the county to put this up. And so there will be public hearings.
Sure.
One of my concerns is remembering New Orleans, who had a hurricane, and all of a sudden, all of their emergency communications were lost because they all blew down, or lost power, or both, actually. And my concern is more about making sure that that everyone is aware of the kind of winds that come up on that. I'm sure AT&T is, but we can get some fairly powerful winds. I was noticing the winds at ski areas last week during our heavy winds were up to 100 miles an hour, and they were closing ski areas down. I believe they may get that high on the top of Montara Mountain, so that's something you may want to check. And I'm just happy to have money coming into the district. I was Sprint, I guess now I'm going to be Verizon or something, and I don't really care. Whatever it is, that's not a big deal. But getting extra cash flow for the district to be able to improve our services for our customers, that I'm really happy with. So thank you for all your efforts.
Sure, sure. You know, your point about wind loading is a good one, and that's something that AT&T has to study very carefully. And they always do. They have to. Not only wind loading, but weight loading. You know, they have to have a licensed structural engineer look at the weight of the antennas and the wind loading and the strength of the, you know, of the support system that's connected to the monopole and the monopole itself. So all of these things have to be looked at, and, you know, the location is probably a windy one, and they will have to take all of that into account. And it's in their interest to do that too, because, you know, obviously if an antenna blows off or something, they're not providing service, and it's a huge liability.
Yep.
But, you know, wind loading is an important issue, and that's something that we will make sure that they pay attention to, but they always do pay attention to that.
Aaron, I've got a few questions. Have you done work with like some of the American Tower sites up on the top of the mountain?
Not on top of the mountain, but I've worked on a lot of American Tower sites at different locations.
Yeah, I was just curious if you'd had any like practical experience with like heavy wind sites like that. Certainly what we had this week.
Not the particular ATC site on top of the mountain that you're describing, but other areas, other sites. I mean, when I was with AT&T Wireless a long time ago, you know, I dealt with a lot of their sites at the time that were on San Bruno Mountain and mountains all over the Bay Area. And you know, I'm a real estate person. I'm not an RF engineer. I'm not, you know, a construction project manager. I'm pretty familiar with how these sites are constructed, but in all my time in this business, which has been quite a while, I've seen dishes blow off of certain structures, and that's very rare. But it's even more rare to see a panel antenna or a whip antenna not installed correctly and blow off. You know, I'm sure it happens. I have not seen it happen in the Bay Area, except for a couple of very, very rare instances. So, but, you know, as far as ATC, American Tower sites in particular, it's really on all of, whether it's American Tower or Crown Castle or any tower company, it's really the carrier. It's really AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile
that are installing the equipment. You know, American Tower is just going to serve as basically, you know, a landlord subleasing space to AT&T or to Verizon. So while they charge, you know, engineering fees and so forth, but it's really the carrier that has to do the engineering and provide the structural analysis reports and the wind loading reports and so forth.
Right. Well,
So,
and
you
AT&T,
know, it's
AT&T and the other
AT&T
carriers,
site is
Aaron,
no different from,
Right.
you know, it's no different from an AT&T or T-Mobile site, except for the fact that it's ATC that's subleasing space and co-locating space.
yeah,
Basically their leasehold interest, you know, so.
I was mostly, I think, trying to land the point that any of the carriers that we're talking about here in the Bay Area that have sites in high places like that, they've been battle tested already by the high winds that we get every few years, and especially this week. So, you know, if stories go around about structures that failed this past week, maybe we can you know, pay attention to that. But in the meantime, it does sound like they carry all the liability. They have to do all the engineering. I do have questions for you on a couple of one technical point, and I know that you probably don't have the answer yet, but I want to kind of inject it into the conversation. You mentioned the propagation report in thinking about the questions that Rick and Jim put to you. I'm concerned, as I think we all are, about the height of a monopole in the coastal zone on a ridge near our equipment on our property. I know that with the experience that we have with the Coastal Commission, that we have a lot to offer in terms of how to do projects, how to construct them in a way that conforms to the Coastal Act and still gets maximum benefit for the community. I don't really need much response on this, but I do want to encourage you to keep that in mind as you talk with AT&T, that we know that people who try to fight the commission usually wish they hadn't bothered. And those who, like us, who've got a lot of experience with it, know that working with the commission is fine. It just means aligning with and understanding what they require. So for example, you know, sighting of the pole, you can make a really big difference in the visibility from Highway 1, whether you place the thing, you know, on the center line on the ridge, 20 feet to the west of the center line or 20 feet to the right of the center line. So their placement there can make a really big, I'm guessing probably 20-30% of the visible pole from the highway, which is what coastal is going to care about. So I just encourage you to, you know, get that into the conversation, because we've got enough property that they got flexibility on some of that siting. But if they're not thinking about that, they might just bite off a problem that they don't even need to have. On the question about the difference between 70 and 80, I want to encourage us all to be asking, what does that extra 10 feet buy you, and why are you asking for that? Does that give you enough additional area in the community to cover to make it worth the extra effort it takes to get the permitting for something that much higher? Or is it, as I'm so used to with RF engineers, I've done a little bit of work with them, they just want it as high as they can possibly get it. But asking them to quantify it turns it into a conversation that we can reason about. So I don't want to be up against, you know, somebody's gut feeling for the most we can get away with. I know they need to be thinking about monetizing this thing and getting return on their investment. So they can't possibly want to go in for a big fight on a 10-foot difference if they don't know it's not going to make them a significant bottom line dollar difference in who they can sell to. And that leads me to my next thing, which is I do have a specific question about, they have decent coverage of a fairly significant portion of Montara and Moss Beach, and we host some of their equipment already. how much does it cost in the new 5G cell site era for them to not build the site, but to outfit it with equipment? Do you have an idea about the magnitude of that capital spend?
That's a really good question. I have an idea of construction costs, including the equipment, including, various equipment types, formerly 3G, 4G, LTE, so forth. I don't have a firm grasp on the cost of specifically of 5G equipment itself. It's very expensive to build a raw land site. The conduit cable runs, the power runs, the fiber runs, the excavation, the engineering, all of the construction work involved. It's pretty expensive. But I don't have data on cost of 5G equipment itself.
Do you have any kind of like, wild guess? Like how many million?
Well, I'd say that construction costs for this kind of a site with these types of cable runs and, part of the variable depends on the type of monopole. I think the water district is thinking about having a monopole rather than a fake tree. And there's a good reason for that. A fake tree is going to look great for about 3 or 4 years, and then it's going to look horrible about 7 to 10 years out. And I mean horrible.
Well,
What happens is the leaves are affected, or the fake leaves, I should say, are affected by ultraviolet radiation by the sun. They turn color. They start out being green and pretty, and then after a few years, they're blue, and it looks like a freak show. And I've seen the very, very good examples of tree monopoles that were beautiful initially that just became monstrosities. So we're trying to avoid that. But if there's a site without with a straight monopole, this type of site can be in the neighborhood of, I'd say, 600,000 to 750,000 rough estimate for total construction cost. It's hard. I guess if I had to ballpark 5G, the AT&T is most likely going to have the LTE as well as 5G equipment at this site. But I would say at least 150 to 200,000, and that's a very, very rough estimate of the equipment costs, the radios, the antennas, the remote radio units, the biplexers, all the elements involved in the service, in a 5G service. And that's a very, very rough estimate.
So AT&T doesn't have fiber into Montara yet. Do you know what they would use for backhaul?
Well, I think the idea is they want to bring fiber up to the site, and that's their plan right now.
Yeah, I'd like to get more, if we can gather any information on their plans to pull fiber into Montara, because I know where fiber is now and I know where it's not, and I'm curious. That's probably going to be the most expensive part of this thing. One last thing, and that is we've talked to carriers for years, and we've never really been able to interest them in this site. But now they're interested in the site, and I have a suspicion that it's because 5G allows them to offer more than cell service and can actually offer them the last mile on internet service. Does that fit with the kind of thing you're hearing?
I mean, every carrier is undercapacitized almost everywhere. I think that COVID the COVID situation has brought that out to the forefront
Mhm.
with huge increases in demand for wireless, any sort of internet service, wireless voice and data service. And, the carriers, I mean, the last mile service, I mean, 4G, 3G, was also a last mile service. But 5G is a little different in that it enables much more bandwidth, much greater bandwidth than the prior, iterations of technology. So why this site? And now is a really good question. I can't help to think that 5G would have something to do with it, but I also think that other factors include that AT&T knows it's undercapacitized in Montara, and they have money in their budget, and we were very forthright about getting them interested in this in Montara Water District property. We told them about quite a few sites. We focused on the sites that were farther away from residences, but also had power, or at least a reasonable connection to power, something not too far away from a power source. Those were that we looked at. So, we're always trying to get AT&T and all the carriers interested in bringing service, but bring it in such a way that, again, it doesn't interfere with water district operations, doesn't cause problems for the community, isn't ugly, is designed in such a way to try to blend it in with the environment as much as possible. So that's been our focus.
Okay. If
I hope that answers your question.
yeah. One last thing, and it's just a thought. If this is, especially if 5G and people working from home is giving them incentive to get in here and try to get competitive into the darker radio parts of town, they're not going to be the only ones thinking about it. So as we think about placement of a pole, not only do we need to think about the Coastal Commission issues, but also where are we going to have Verizon site their pole, because they're going to want in on this to stay competitive. So
well, Verizon has a site on the freeway at right next to the water district, the water district building right off the freeway. Each carrier has slightly different coverage objectives. I mean, I think it would be a good thing if Verizon were to become interested in this Alta Vista Tank 2. I don't know that that's a guarantee.
no, I'm just saying let's not
great, but
yeah, let's just not close the door on it by giving, when we negotiating away placement of another pole in the same area.
oh, absolutely, no.
Right, because they're going to have contingent for elevation and frequency space.
They can use the site. AT&T can use the site, but this is not exclusive in any way to AT&T.
No, I'm thinking
cooperate with and work with any other carrier that comes up there.
Right. I just want to make sure, Aaron, that we go into this thinking if there's one, there's three. So how do we make sure that the design choices and the siting of it don't make it harder for the second and third ones to come in?
Sure.
And honestly, us thinking that way may help us in our negotiation with the first one as well.
Absolutely.
Well,
Good thought.
my
Catherine?
experience is that when once the ice is broken and one company has come in, the others feel much more comfortable because they know their needs can be met, for in this case in terms of power and everything else.
Yes.
Okay, any further
Yeah.
board?
That is true.
Well, Aaron, thank you very much. We look forward to hearing more.
Absolutely. You're quite welcome. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I don't really know what happened, but anyway, I'm glad I was able to still talk to you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you.
All
Okay.
right.
With that,
All right, everybody. Take care.
You too. Thanks.
thank you, Aaron.
All righty.
With that, we are going to take a 5-minute recess and then reconvene in closed session for
We
conference.
have all the reports.
Ah, I was trying to cheat. the
Don't
schedule.
cut me off.
Yeah. All right, Sewer Authority Mid-Coast. Rick, Catherine?
Catherine, you want to?
Greg, why don't you do it?
No, this is Sam.
Yeah, Sam.
Oh, Sam. Well, Sam, I have a whole lot of stuff.
Go for it.
At our last meeting, we elected officers. Barbara Dye is the chair this year from Granada. Next year, the chair will be from Half Moon Bay. At our last meeting, we also approved, just like we had done here, the employee vacation changes that were made due to COVID on a 1 year, and those changes or opportunities were made in a 1 year only change. We got a report from Water Management, their year-end report, a report on the Granada Force Main, that's coming along. And Rick, why don't you talk about the special committee?
I can do that. I'll try to do quickly. I made the offer kind of that we discussed here earlier to set up, we all realize that Sam's over 40 years old. There are some issues with sea level rise in the future, things like laws that'll be in the next 20 years that you can put nothing into the ocean, period. And maybe it was time to let's take an entire new look at SAM and what we want to do. We got very good response, and we formed initially just a quick 3-person committee, one from each agency, to meet this Saturday. Time to kick the ball off. We talked to the attorney, and he talked about various things we can do in the future. We can set up public meetings. We can do all kinds of things from this committee. I had a great talk with Clemens and Pippin this morning. I've got about 15 ideas I'm going to type up and just send out to Debbie Ruddock and Matthew Clark from Granada, just to sort of kick things off and get things going. All kinds of great ideas. My first guess would be that we will certainly be looking at multiple smaller plant sites, all kinds of good reasons for that. It would possibly, and this is all possibly, eliminate massive transfers of sewage and stuff up and down the coast. That might make Half Moon Bay very happy. There are some minor thoughts I have if all of a sudden we have a vision to eliminate the IPS. That might influence them in their lawsuit and things like that. But I think it's initially very cooperative. We've opened it up to, hey, talk to your engineers, talk to your general managers. The Saturday meeting, the first one, will be kind of launch the process. What kind of meetings do we want to have? How do we contain all these ideas? I've got like 14 ideas from Clemens and Pippin, and we'll be discussing all those. And at the next meeting, we'll be able to get back to you with, the responses I got from Granada and Half Moon Bay. I think it's a good thing. My ulterior motive is to get rid of some of the politics. We can design a system that may eliminate political conflicts. Everything's open at this point, open to brainstorming, and I'm hoping it all works out. So. That's
And for our next meeting will be on Monday. And there will be action on the wastewater management, whether we continue that contract, and on the MRESCO loan. The first item on the agenda is directly related to what Rick was just talking about, and it's the flow reports from 2020. There's a chart in the staff report, and Granada Sanitary District in 2012 was at 28.66% of the plant capacity. They are now down to 20.50% of plant capacity.
Oh,
Montara was at 21.30 in 2012 and is now at 21.10. Now, Half Moon Bay, I'm glad everybody's sitting down, has gone from 50% in 2012 to 58.40% of plant capacity for dry weather flow
That's up through when?
through 2020, from 2012 to 2020.
So this was with everyone working from home, or many people working from home, increasing. I know that when I
But
was
it
commuting to
didn't,
work, I wasn't
didn't,
using Sam during the day.
it didn't just go like this. It's been a steady
Yeah,
increase.
no, but isn't that kind of fascinating with, I would think that with more people at home, we would see flows noticeably larger.
Right.
If
From
you're,
all, but it's all of the flows equal 100%. So however these
It's
things
it's the
shift
share. Okay.
around.
Clemens, you had a comment?
yeah, Catherine, you're right that there is a slight increase from Half Moon Bay in the very most recent years. The big increase is happening in this 1 year. I looked at the graph. I don't have it in front of me right now. You do. Was it 2012 to 2013? Or
No, it
I
was
think no, it must have been
2012 to
later.
2020.
Yes,
There's
but there
there's
is
one
a
bar
jump.
per year.
There is 1 year where everything changes, and that change goes back to the calibration of the meters, as it was determined that the meters have been calibrated wrong before.
They were
So what
underreported.
we're trying to get to is it's not the increase happened actually much slower and is probably going on much longer than the graph shows. So I think the differences in flows that we observe today may have been there already before even 2012 and just
Well,
weren't captured correctly.
that may be, but the important thing in my point of view is in this discussion on the lawsuit. And I don't know, somebody at some point in time from that middle kingdom called Granada wanted just to have the flows allocated on a permanent basis of 20, 30, and 50. And it never, fortunately, never did happen. But I think this does show the importance of what I have lobbied for, which is the pay as you go, pay as you do. And so it's something just to keep in mind. And frankly, Rick, what I see it would have to do with is in this long range separate plants. It means that Half Moon Bay, if they wanted to, could put in several package treatment plants in various locations in their city.
Yep.
And cover their actual use, just like we would cover our actual use and
Sure.
Granada would cover their actual use.
Sure. I think there's tons of good possibilities, but I think the main thought, like Catherine's saying, is we have different uses, we have different styles, we have different geography.
Right.
Why are we trying to shove everything together? Just let each group deal with their own problems, recycled water and development. And so just for the public, they should remember that quickly, that the current split is Half Moon Bay only pays 50% of a lot of the maintenance and chemicals and a lot of other things, where they're now utilizing 58% of the plant. So they've got a good deal right now, and we're helping to subsidize them a little bit. So.
Okay, anything further on the SAM report?
Nope.
Okay, Midcoast Community Council.
No,
Greg,
it's
you want to take that? Catherine?
Greg,
Well, I'll just mention again, we have a strategic planning workshop or retreat this Saturday. And so I invite the public, and especially Montara Water and Sanitary District, to submit concerns, things you want us to be looking at. Separately, the major, I think, issue facing the council right now is the Medio Bridge replacement. There's considerable community support, but there's also opposition by people concerned about the long-term effects of coastal erosion. And the negative declaration that was put out by the county to this new untutored reviewer was incredibly flawed. I'm wondering if the negative declaration is even a viable tool, given that the ways I've seen it being used in my limited experience. So, and then of course, as you heard, Connect the Coast side is out. We have to comment on that. The concern there for the community is not only the impact on traffic, and I disagree with Catherine about the placement of 3 roundabouts in a 1.5 mile stretch and what that's going to do, because I've seen it fail miserably on Fresh Pond Parkway in Massachusetts. But there's also a cost issue, and I don't know if you've read it, but they're trying to charge the existing residences for the cost of all this stuff, even though the tipping point is being caused by new joiners. And so I think that's an issue that I certainly feel strongly about. I don't know where that's going to go. That's it for me.
Greg, thank you very much. And I think we ought to pay for it with a toll gate right at the tunnel.
I would love to have visitors have to pay to come over and use the beaches, but I'm not sure that's legal.
Well, I think putting this cost on people who are existing residents, which is what I just heard you say, is a way of stopping all progress. This has got to have some kind of use-based and logical. They should be looking, it's a state highway. They need to be looking at getting the state to pay for it, because it is used by people from all over the state.
My perception in the 10 years that I've been here is that the biggest change has been the amount of visitor traffic.
Yes.
And especially with COVID of late, we really don't have a traffic problem as much as we used to, except for the visitors.
Except for the visitors. And those are pouring down over the hill from Daly City and over the hill from Hayward, and these poor people have no other place to go. So I have been stunned at how crowded our roads have been, and it's certainly been a discussion on Nextdoor. I know you're on Nextdoor. Maybe you could put out a note to everyone about this report and maybe throw in some incendiary facts.
I'm good at that. Maybe I could write an incendiary article with Michelle's help.
Okay.
I bet Michelle would love that. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Just quick comment. All the big bridges have tolls. There are toll roads all over the place. It would not be massively an issue because it's all photographic now anyway. If that were true and Catherine's thing, there wouldn't be no reason to prevent it being a toll road just because it's a state highway. So
Okay, anything
I'd throw
else?
that in the mix.
Anything else on the Midcoast Council? Greg, anything further? Midcoast Community Council? Okay. CSDA report, Rick.
Our meeting is going to be first week in February.
And LAFCO report, Rick.
LAFCO, yes.
Woohoo!
Good news, scary news. The quick good news, the sphere of influence discussions for our local, not local, but local office resource conservation district, the RCD, has been on the thing for 2 meetings. When the RCD district was designed decades ago, they excluded most of the urban areas like downtown Half Moon Bay, Montara, that sort of thing. RCD actually does tons of work in those areas. And there's really no reason why they shouldn't be able to continue to do that. So the sphere of influence was discussions had been to just wipe all those little donuts out. They call them little donut holes. And that was going through very well. All 7 board members, commissioners, totally supported that because it just made sense. One great stat from the RCD is they get a little support from taxes. Everything they do is pretty much grants on their own dime. For every dollar they receive from the governments, they get $146 worth of projects out, which is stunning. At this last round we just covered, they were talking about basically the watersheds at the top of the hills here and down to 280. That protects watersheds, forests. They requested not only just being on the coast, but taking that watershed also. That was passed unanimously by the commissioners to let them, and they showed projects that they do work there anyway. And this just sort of consolidates the RCD's thing. I think that's massively good. And I think that was an absolutely correct decision. The dangerous decision, and I'll just try to do this very quickly. There's another sanitary district in the East Palo Alto Sanitary District. You'll hear some dangers here. Big developers over there, including Mid-Penn Housing, which is proposing the project in Moss Beach, got together with the city of East Palo Alto and did a huge development plan proposal. Nothing wrong with that. Then, after designing all this new development, which includes all kinds of things, affordable housing, offices, just, full range of stuff. Then they came to the sanitary district with a project and said, okay, here's our project. What do we do? Like our sanitary district, they ran the numbers, the engineering, and said, these pipes are undersized. Total cost $7 million or something like that. Developer said, expletive, charge your current customers with that. Very bad precedent, unknown here on the coast as far as I know in any other district. City of East Palo Alto backed them. The sanitary district said, by law, we can't do that, which I believe is true, and that's being decided. They had a municipal services review, which like the one they did on the coast, an MSR scheduled for July in our calendar for LAFCO. They demanded that that be moved up to December. They have said and stated publicly, the problem is we have this obstinate, irritating sanitary district, which is blocking this affordable housing and all this development. Okay. They mediated a little bit and the sanitary district said, no, we're not going to pay for your development.
Right.
The MSR is now going to move along. in my inimitable way, I got irritated and made a little speech. Basically saying this is massively outrageous. You are asking the sanitary district to break California law or sanitary district law, and you are trying to put the blame on them. And part of the MSR is to look at merging that with West Bay Sanitary District or dissolving them totally out of business. I was only mildly rude in my presentation. It's available online.
Congratulations.
At the end of that, I said, well, I made about a 5-minute speech and said, well, at a minimum, what I want to do is, because the MSR is going to go through, I couldn't block that. They've already voted. Josh Cosgrove, the other sanitary district rep, and I voted against the accelerated process.
He's a water district rep.
Yes, we got outvoted. So it's moving along, but I said, at a minimum, add to the MSR a complete legal analysis of California law, sanitary district law, to show that these people are not at fault. They're doing their job. They kind of voted on that. They were sort of loosely at that point voting, and O'Neill went with me and said that was fine. A couple other people said mumble, mumble, mumble. The interesting vote is now Harvey Rohrbach from Half Moon Bay is now officially a member and not an alternate. When it got around to him, he said, no, I vote against that. I don't know the exact quote. I vote against that because the legal issues are not important. That's my boom comment. This will move on. Since then, I've talked briefly with Clemens. I have contacted the East Palo Alto Sanitary District. He thanked me for my comments. We are now working together. His group is totally researching all the legal codes. And he is going to also write a letter to the executive director of LAFCO saying, I request that you include a total analysis of the legal aspects of this, because as we've seen, Broadmoor Police Department up near Daly City, all of our districts on the coast, one of the more consistent aspects of LAFCO municipal service reviews is the first thing they say is all special districts should be merged together or eliminated. That's been my goal, to kill that thought. I don't want to get in massive discussions now because that'll go on for a while, but that's kind of the report. And I have a lot of thanks from them, and we'll be working together with them not because we work with East Palo Alto much, but they were talking about doubling the rates for the current customers. East Palo Alto, as you know, is not the world's wealthiest district in this county. And that would just basically put the entire development costs on the local residents. There's lots of other stuff going on. We'll learn a lot more from that, but this is just about as bad as it gets as far as if the MSR actually recommended a merger to get that nasty little district out of the way so we can develop stuff and pass all the costs on to the customers. So I don't want to get into big talk about it now, but
Please tell them to get a hold of CSDA.
yep. They actually have Clemens, whatever the CERS, CASA.
Yes, CASA.
Is the sanitary district, because it's sanitary district law. And he said, boom, I'm doing that. I'm writing my letter to Martha. He was very happy and very cooperative. And I think I'm going to bring it up at our chapter meeting next month. I'm going to call for a poll. How many times in any of your folks' experience have you paid for all the developer costs for infrastructure expansion? And I expect my answer is going to be 0. And I want to get that poll official, passed to Martha Poyados, our executive director. And I'm actually probably going to take the step when announce the consultants. I'm taking this to the consultants and I'm sending them the information and says, I don't care, I want this in your report. So put this in your report. So
I think, Rick, the other thing you need to be aware of is with new state senators and new state representatives, they may be trying to slide something through at the state level, and that's where CSDA as well as CASA,
mhm,
as well as getting everybody to get in touch with their local representatives is very, very important so that this doesn't
thank you.
get slid
I'll
around
talk to
behind.
Josh. Josh is our new senator. He's very receptive to all kinds of good stuff.
Good.
I will definitely contact him and just tell him this is coming up. So be ready in case you see something strange. But to me, it's a power move. They haven't said it specifically. The implication to me is obvious. They're talking about possible merging it into West Bay Sanitary District. I haven't seen any comments from West Bay Sanitary yet. I will contact them tomorrow to say, hey, have you guys heard about this? There are some strange things where East Palo Alto might actually take territory from West Bay. It's very complicated. There are multiple other developments now being proposed to pile onto this. So it's going to get very complicated and possibly very nasty. But I'm really irritated. So
It's all about money.
I will do my best. And when I get angry, I get angry. So more later on that.
Well,
Rick,
thank
I
you for
just wanna-
being on top of it.
Rick, I just want to comment on the comment about the law. If comments like that become a regular thing at LAFCO runs the very serious risk of becoming an unserious agency.
Yep.
And I might urge not just a strict or not just a stern rebuke for the comment, but a request to discuss that very topic as an agenda item at LAFCO, because that's a very concerning comment. If members of LAFCO wish to discount the law out of hand, then what of LAFCO can be considered a serious piece of work?
I am shocked that he would put that on video. But the slightly better version of that is obviously LAFCO proposed in our MSR that all the districts be merged. The executive director has said LAFCO itself will not do that. So these are MSRs. The recommendation was to wipe out Broadmoor Police, shove it under Daly City, because obviously that makes more sense. I don't know the number of citizens who showed up at that LAFCO meeting, but they all basically said, keep your effing hands off my district and go away. And nothing happened. I've talked to the East Palo Alto guy.
Yeah, I'm just talking about,
Yes.
I
don't care about the legal aspect.
The new member's comment is downright un-American and should be challenged and excoriated rather thoroughly. And I really think LAFCO should take it up as a serious matter of whether or not comments like that are to be tolerated at a LAFCO meeting.
Well,
Maybe
they can be allowed, but the LAFCO board itself needs to say, well, that could be your opinion, but that's not the policy of this board.
Well, there are comments that, there were comments in the Senate recently where someone urged the taking down of the comment, and it almost went to a fist fight. There are things that are not appropriate for people who've sworn the oath to say as an elected, and that crosses a line. And you know what? In this country, I think we're all starting to realize you got to speak up early, and you got to say that's over the line. That's not appropriate for an elected official, nor is it appropriate for a member of the LAFCO board to be talking like that. And you really want to consider whether or not you want to keep that up, and whether or not the other members of LAFCO want to have some words about how someone on the commission is comporting themselves. And maybe you want to consider something about, I don't like to get into behavior codes and all that, but saying right off the bat, we don't care about the law, then you don't belong on the board.
That's right.
If I can just make one quick comment before Peter jumps in. Other members just said, they were kind of trying to vote on the measure at the same time. I'm trying to stick in this consideration, so it was a little messy, but other people just said no. And that's fine. They don't have to include it as a requirement. Harvey did the extra step of saying no, and I don't want it because it's not relevant. I don't know the exact quote. He went a little beyond. If he had just voted no, there's no issue.
Sure.
But he made that one little extra statement, and I'm holding on to that one.
We're a nation of laws. Peter?
Yep.
We can hold on to the cost sharing invoice that we just received and paid to Levco in protest.
The special districts pay 1/3 of, LAFCO costs. The cities pay 1/3, the county pays 1/3, and all the special districts, they're roughly 26, 25, it's sort of nebulous, pay 1/3 of LAFCO costs. That's a good point. I might want to use that one a little later.
Yeah.
Well, I think we want to see a well-functioning LAFCO.
Yeah.
And my point is actually calling LAFCO to function right and repudiate something that's so, LAFCO is about law and good governance.
I'm going to bring this up as a major item at our chapter meeting in early February. I think it's the first Tuesday, but it's been nebulous with COVID and everything that I'm going to do the poll, and I'm going to ask them if, depending on how that comes out, how to contact Martha about this, because this is, as far as I'm concerned, I have never seen that happen before, that a developer says, I'm not paying that, give it to your customers. I think that's, as Clement and everybody has said, that's kind of illegal.
Wow.
There's lots of laws saying you can't. They're putting in an affordable housing district and making the local citizens pay for the infrastructure.
There are
That's just not legal.
There's a lot of things going on right now that have me somewhat nervous. If in this time of COVID, our state has decided that you don't have to pay your rent and you can't be evicted. And there are other bills that you don't have to pay and suffer any consequences for. The problem is that the landlord still has to pay the property tax. And if the tenant doesn't pay for the water or the sewer, it goes on the tax bill that the landlord has to pay, and you can't raise your rent. So it leaves, it just seems that the logical costs and effects are getting ignored. I heard somebody complaining, I was reading about Sacramento and they're putting in these mini houses for the homeless, which sounds like a great idea. It's something I've advocated for a very long time. But nobody's talking about who's going to pay for all of the added costs. And it keeps getting put on a smaller and smaller segment of society. And this is just one more instance where they want the people who probably are on budgets to suddenly double what they're paying or more, so that they can put in people who can't afford it. But part of the reason for the affording, I was looking on our website at how to read your tax bill, which is on the MWSD website, and I appreciate that. And I was just looking at this hypothetical bill at how much we pay on all these additional bonds and infrastructure things. And it's a lot of money. And they get, and so I see what they're doing just as part of this increasing, we will do what we want, and if you're not paying attention, you get stuck with the bill. And good on the sanitary district for standing up for themselves. And I would like to see this district send a letter of support for this MSR.
Yeah, what I'd like to, on that, and I want to move this on, let's see what happens. We'll have, I think, our chapter meeting before our next meeting. And then if I get support from them and other districts doing the same thing, I'll bring it up. I'll get it on the agenda through Scott to have the option to discuss that and do what Catherine just said, because I think that would be very important if a whole bunch of, the trouble with special districts here, which we saw at our ratepayers increase meeting, folks like the fire district represented there and said, I don't know why you folks keep raising your rates. We at the fire department, we just put in a $7 million thing and we buy multi-million fire trucks all the time. We don't have any problems. There's healthcare districts, there's county-wide districts. Most of them don't have customer. I forgot what the type and the title of those kind of districts are, but all sewer districts and water districts get all their money from the ratepayers.
They're enterprise districts.
Enterprise. And other districts like the fires and all the other kinds, healthcare, they don't deal with any of that stuff. So
No, they get it from their property taxes.
you know,
Okay,
we don't.
I'm gonna grab the
So,
agenda back
we
and
cut that off, I think is good.
Catherine and Rick, great director reports as well there. And anyone else with a director's report? No? Okay. Attorney's report?
Yes, just briefly. Thank you, President Boyd. I wanted to circle back about David Motry, the gentleman that attended a couple of meetings, I believe the last meeting, with some issues with our sewer extension agreement. He has since signed the agreement and sent it back to the district as is.
Good.
Thank
So I
you.
think that's good news.
Thank you.
Thank you for that follow-up. Let's see, general manager report.
No report.
Christine, do we need to say anything, make any statements before we go into closed session?
We don't tonight, but thank you for the reminder.
Okay, great. We are going to take a recess. We're going to bid all of our members of the public a good night and thank you very much for joining us. And we will come back into closed session to discuss existing litigation, public employee performance evaluation, conference with labor negotiators for the unrepresented employee of the general manager. And then afterwards, we'll report out any action, if any action is taken. So,
Bye, Michelle. Bye, Greg.
Thank you so much for joining us, and let's recess for 5 minutes. Good night, Tracy.